the breakup allowed the inner wild woman to come forth, and the inner wild woman who she doesn't give a fuck. And that's what makes her so sexy. But the sexy isn't like, it's not, she's not giving a fuck so she can be sexy, because then that is giving a fuck, you know? And it's like, we're like, sometimes that subconscious of us is like, let me do the glow up so then I can find the guy. And it's like, the glow up's for you. Bottom line, this is all for you, because the truth be told, most people are going to come in and out of your life, period. Most people are. And it's like, you are the only person you're going to have for the rest of your life. And it's like, how do you want to show up? And who do you want to be? And if you were to look back on this chapter of your life, like, what do you want this chapter to be? And that for me was so huge of like, right now I have the option, you know, it's like, I can make this either my like demise, or I can make this my like fucking radical rebirth. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to choose the latter. And I'm going to choose to make this like my biggest heart opening yet. And you're still going to go through the sadness. You're still going to go through the grief. But it's like, for me, it's like simultaneously be creating the existence that you want, rather than like waiting for the pain and the grief to stop, because breakups have a lot of layers. Welcome back to the High Self Podcast. My name is Sahara Rose, and on this podcast, I love to take spiritual concepts, the contemplations that I have been having in my everyday life, and bring them to you so it can actually serve your needs. And for me, heartbreak has been my ultimate teacher. For those of you who don't know, I got divorced at the end of last year, and it has been the ultimate initiation for me. I've been doing this podcast for 7+ years and have been practicing yoga for so long, but nothing has taught me the lessons and escalated my spiritual growth in the way that heartbreak has. And it's something about the perceived loss of love. And I want to say perceived, of like feeling like it's like when you're in love, it's like you feel you're at one with totality. You know, it's like that feeling of merging, of union, of coming back to the state of wholeness that we long for when we are like born out of our mother's wombs. And then we're like on this planet, we're like, take me back to like when I was one with my mother, with the cosmos, with all. And now I'm like here, I'm separated, and we spend the rest of our lives like trying to go back. And like when you love someone, that's almost like why you want to merge with them. You want to like be in their bodies. We want to go back to source. But then what happens is we so long for that experience that we project it onto people who we think will get us there faster, or now, or loving them will get me somewhere or do something, or this is my idea of who I should. And there's just probably more than anything distortions around love. And what I have found in my life and what I have asked for is for the intelligence of love to be my teacher, and for me to love those that have lessons for me to share, you know? And I believe that oftentimes our first few relationships need to be karmic. They need to be those relationships that bring out the wounds, that bring out the triggers and the shadows, and oftentimes will replay our childhood traumas and our attachment styles and the ways that we never felt fully seen and enough. And we need to bring those to the surface, because when you love someone, you so badly want it to work that there's like no better motivating factor than like a relationship to really look and heal these things. But after going through those initiations, you can actually choose to decide to shift into dharmic relationship, which is a relationship that is serving the highest good of all, a relationship that is ultimately here to be of service. That doesn't mean that there aren't any triggers and shadows that show up, but ultimately your love heals. And that is the path that I am on, and that is what only I am calling forward. And it has been so fascinating for me to watch fellow sisters, queens, like spiritual priestesses go through their own heartbreak initiations. Like almost every spiritual queen that I love and respect has gone through a tremendous heartbreak in the past few years, especially. It's like a reinitiation. And I remember about this time last year, it was September of 2022, and I long story short, a friend of mine, Mia Magic, who's been on this podcast a bunch, is like, there's this music, spirituality, medicine festival in Greece called Colibri, and you got to come. And I'm like, Greece, music, that sounds up my alley. It made no sense, but I decided to just go. And she's like, a friend of mine, Blu, and I had met Blu. Her and I had connected like when I was 25. And it was like before she like went into like the Amazon and like sat with medicine for so long. And we were like both like little like spiritual babies then. And then we were in this music festival and she had just gone through a really tremendous breakup in her life and the initiation of that. And I had not yet gone through my divorce. And I remember we were in this circle and she was leading this beautiful song and she'll share more about her experience through music and her actually, partially not having total hearing and her hearing partially going deaf, but the musicality coming through her. And she sang this song called Spirit Lead Me, which is the song that you may have heard. It's like actually a church song, which I later learned, but she sang it in her own way. And it was like, I'll let her sing it, but essentially it was like, Spirit, lead me more than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger wherever you will call me. Take me deeper than my feet will ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Creator. And the way that she's saying that and the beauty of her voice, while also simultaneously knowing that how can someone with such a voice be going deaf? Like just the juxtaposition of that, it was just like this heartbreak, yet this beauty. And she did not know, and I did not know that song became my mantra. And when I went through my divorce, which was a really traumatic time in my life, I would just sit by myself, whether I was in front of the ocean or on the mountain or just like in my bed and in the darkness, and I would just sing this song again and again. And it became my mantra that brought me through this entire year. And I have her to thank because she put that song into my consciousness and the path of surrender that this song really is, of like, we don't know. You might think you have your life figured out. You might think you're happily married. And ultimately, you don't know what can happen at any given moment, but all you can do is trust that Spirit is leading you more than your feet could ever wander, and your faith will be made stronger. So with that, let's welcome Blu here on the podcast.
I haven't said anything yet, and I'm already crying. Goodness gracious. That was beautiful. A little lot, by the way.
Every single time I'm somewhere where I'm feeling uncertain, because this whole year to me has been going into my uncertainty of, going to different countries and places like by myself. And when I have those moments of silence, that song just keeps coming to me. So I want to thank you for putting it into my being. And before we get into that, of the path of surrender and breakups and all of that, I want to ask you, what makes you your highest self?
Oh, what makes me my highest self? Oh, great question. Right into the core. The first thing that's coming up for me is when I am fully unapologetically expressing myself, and that can be in many different mediums, ways, shapes, and forms. That could be painting a mural and just being covered in paint and allowing my hand to be the paintbrush, and that there is no difference between me and divinity in itself, which is moving through my body. My higher self is when I'm freestyle rapping in a circle and the beat is just going and you don't even know where it's coming from anymore, but the words are just flowing out your mouth and you're meeting yourself over and over and over again in the present moment, because it's a co-creation with something greater. I am merging with my higher self when I am standing at the foot of a grandmother oak tree and having a deep dialogue with no words spoken, and yet so many words spoken, and learning the stories and the tales of trees and rocks and nature that says a message if you're so quiet enough to listen to it. And I would say that I am my higher self when I am standing on stage and leading some sort of activation where I'm nervous beforehand and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm going to mess up. And the second I go into my dharma, the second I am doing what I'm meant to be doing, there is no I anymore, and it completely melts into the we and the whole. And I am just sort of living to blow my own mind at that point. So I would say that it comes in many different forms, but it's more so the energetics as opposed to actually what it is that I'm doing. And it's when I don't know where I end and spirit begins.
So beautifully said. And it is that element of flow and surrender and receiving and being the channel. And those moments, like the freestyle rapping is just such a perfect, and we were both talking, we were like, I was like, I want to be a rapper. You're like, I want to be a rapper. We're like, we're both feeling called to be rappers. And it's so true because you feel such a state of flow of like, you can't know what you're going to say next. You just have to be the channel and receiving and letting it be melodic and poetic and fun and swaggy and all of it. So
and sometimes my subconscious comes out though, and like there'll be like someone I walked into the space and there's a guy that I have a crush on in the corner of the room, and I'm like, all right, say everything but about this guy. And then I'm like, yeah, and then this guy in the corner and he's well hot. And I'm like, what the heck did I just say? Why did I just say that out loud? But sometimes, it's just got to be known.
It's in the field. Exactly. So I want to talk about breakups being, to me, the ultimate fertile ground for our transformation. So can you share with me how breakups, because you've gone through a number, some people listen to Andre's podcast as well, and you guys had a relationship and you had a beautiful conscious uncoupling that you've done podcasts about. So you've had a variety of different breakups in different ways. How have these been fertile grounds to your transformation?
Ooh, breakups. I would rather break my leg than go through heartbreak. Like, I'd rather break both my legs than go through heartbreak. Knock on wood that doesn't happen. So it's the deepest pain that I know to exist. And also simultaneously, it is the deepest oneness with spirit, like you said in the introduction, right? So it sits on the same spectrum. And for me, heartbreak has been the perfect place for the alchemical process of my greatest challenge turning also into my greatest gift. And I am still experiencing reminiscence of heartbreak. I still go through moments where I dip into deep sadness, a deep longing. And what I've also learned from that is that any point or any time where I have looked for external validation as to who I am, what it is that I'm doing, am I doing a good job? Oh, I'm an attractive person because I have X, Y, and Z interested in me, or I'm in this relationship. It's in the spaces in between where the actual genuine empowerment happens, and it's from self-validation. And self-validation has only been able to actually be fully actualized when I'm not in partnership. And it's in those moments when I feel undesirable, or I feel like what I call my Gollum phase, which is like, how could anybody love me? I'm hideous. I must return to my cave and never be seen again. It's in those micro moments when I actually start to be gentle with myself. It's where I believe true power is born. And to make a symphony, it's the in-between, the silence in between the notes, which actually create the symphony itself. And so I have learned the most about myself when I've gone through heartbreak and being single. I have learned to validate, self-soothe, and be the mother and the father of my own experience when I was outsourcing that for my past partnerships. And I feel like my genuine empathy towards a depth of suffering for others that are experiencing heartbreak has deepened to a point where when somebody else is telling me their own personal experience, I feel the emotions as if they are my own and therefore can relate and just hold space. And I think sometimes holding space isn't even needing to say anything, but just to feel somebody in what it is that's present.
So I'm obsessed with health that's catered to your unique needs because, like Ayurveda speaks about, we are all different. We all need different things in different stages of our lives, like the diet we're eating and even where we live, it really impacts us. And a lot of us have hormonal issues, digestive issues, things that are going on under the surface that if we don't actually get a blood test and get to the bottom of it, they're going to persist and even get worse. So Joy is an incredible company that will measure your unique individual biomarkers to give you a really accurate picture of your health and create a personalized plan for you. It includes one-on-one consults with board-certified clinicians and follow-ups with lifestyle coaches. They work on things like metabolic health, sexual health, hormonal health, anti-aging, and so much more. And the labs start at just $99. Plus, High Self podcast listeners can take an additional 20% off at choosejoy.co/Sahara. That's choose CHOOSE joy, JOI.co/Sahara. And you can find that link in the show notes. It's so universal because I've experienced those exact same things of, before when someone would say, oh, I went through a breakup, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But I never really I didn't approach it the same way as if someone died in their family or they were sick. Now I'm like, oh, it can be like equally, drastic like that. And I'm like, wow, we don't realize how painful breakups really are, divorces really are. Like there's nothing, I've experienced a lot in my life. There's nothing that is the equivalent of that because it really is the loss of this thing that we want so badly, and also to choose the self-love, to choose to honor yourself more than this perceived idea of what love is, because we have been so conditioned, especially as women, as young girls, that like love can only exist in a relationship and there's the Prince Charming and he chooses you and you live happily ever after. And if not, like, well, then you're fucked.
Thanks, Disney.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm curious for you, you've had different breakups. Like, how did you know it was time for you to walk away? Like, what were some of those pings?
Well, there's two different parts here because I was in a relationship with Andre, who I've done the podcast with, and we publicly talked about our uncoupling and went right into the depth of it. So this is a public thing. And then I went into a relationship after that. So there's two different pieces. And with my relationship with Andre, I was still in my maiden phase. And what I mean by maiden is there's three sort of stages for women to be able to archetypically move through the stages of life. There's the maiden, there's the mother, and there's the crone. The maiden, from what I understand, is always thinks the grass is greener on the other side. Loads of energy, super attractive, like has a zest for life. Doesn't really nurture or nourish the soil beneath her feet, but thinks because there's always a wellspring of opportunities that happiness lies the next best thing, or is constantly chasing champagne moments, even though there's like a whimsical, fun experience with the maiden. And then the mother starts to nourish the soil beneath her feet and stops thinking the illusion that happiness lies outside of the present moment. When I get the next relationship, when I get to the next job, when I get the next paycheck, when I go on the next travel, when I leave the house and go over to this place, that happiness will be over there. The illusion starts to diminish between the maiden and the mother. And it actually starts to say, it's right here, right now, through my creation of how much I put in is what I get out of what's here. And then the crone, hell, she ain't got nothing to prove. Like, she chilling. She's got no people pleaser energy. The maiden is all about external validation. The crone does not need your validation, does not need to be accepted or welcomed in this space, and usually only speaks, unless it improves his silence, from a deep sense of wisdom. Now, these are the embodied archetypes. And so when I can understand the different archetypes, I can see where I'm at on the spectrum. And of course, being a 32-year-old woman, no children, and currently single, I've been predominantly in the maiden archetype. And when I was in this relationship, I thought that the grass was greener somewhere else. And I was not at peace with the mundane, because life was sort of like a champagne popping moments. I'm starting to experience success. I'm starting to experience my business is popping off. I'm starting to experience loads of opportunities and sparkly moments. And so when I would come home and the mundane moments were kind of like boring, I was kind of projecting on the relationship and thought that happiness was somewhere else. Now, there's many different layers to it, and there's multiple pieces that are not necessary to go into. But in that stage, when I walked away, it was because I was kind of like bored, not being fully forged in the fire, and thinking that the grass is greener somewhere else. Now, looking back on that, it's one of my greatest pains to this present moment, if I'm being really honest, because I think that there was so much beauty that I didn't actually really fully understand what is the most important thing in a relationship. And that is to feel safe, and that is to be respected, and that is to have mutual growth on the table, and that is to genuinely care for what's each other's best interest, and to genuinely want to support each other to thrive and evolve. Now, I didn't have that level of awareness. I was operating in the maiden archetype, and I was not really fully nourishing what was right here. And I look back on that now, and I would have done things differently. Now I get to live with that choice, where now any part of me that says that happiness is somewhere else, I check myself, because it's been one of my greatest pains in my adult life, is this feeling. So it continues to be medicine for me. It continues to nourish me. And what happened is I rolled straight into another relationship, which turned out to not be a safe place and to not be that I genuinely care for your best interest, but it was a sparkly experience. And what I had to do is learn what's most important, because not all that glitters is gold. And someone with a good heart that genuinely cares is one of the most precious things on the planet. And from this point forward, one of the pieces that I'm continuing to integrate is that when someone genuinely cares and their heart's in the right place and they are devoted to a path of self-growth and self-awareness, this is a keeper. This is like pure gold. And as I continue to move forward, I've completely recalibrated and renegotiated my relationship with what is important in relationships and what is important with the people that are blessed enough to have, in the core tribe, the seats at your immediate table, what I like to call is like your core inner tribe. What is the piece that's on the altar in those relationships? And if it's genuine service, genuine self-growth, genuine respect, transparency, clear communication, and honoring each other's individual freedom and in the sovereignty coming together from a choice, now we're working with gold.
Very few people express that. It's so normal to be like, don't settle, sis. There's always plenty of fish out there, fish out in the sea, and you'll always up level and get someone better. And it's like, to realize that if you have someone that you feel safe with, that's on a personal growth journey, that respects you, that's ultimately what we're all looking for. We think we're looking for, he needs to make this much money and be this tall and, be looked up to, and like all of the things that like biology makes us also as women crave oftentimes, of like, like a big successful man means like my safety in the tribe. And it's like, ultimately, it's like your safety comes from being seen, heard, and understood, and
that's
I
rare.
Very rare.
Like, I'm starting to notice now as a single lady.
Oh God,
I'm
yes.
like, it is dry out here. Like, what is going on?
We'll get into that.
It's amazing thought that there was infinite possibilities.
And it's like, and there is, and it's like, humans are so sacred that I feel like sometimes this like dating world makes humans feel like you'll just find another one. And it's like, imagine if someone felt that way about you. Of like, Blue is all the things. She was spiritual. She was fun. She was this. But like, there's other spiritual fun people too. So, it's like, but there's only one Blue. There's only, and it's like, we forget that. We just see them as, we see people as commodities so much in dating, of like, are you going to fulfill this like role? And it's like, are you actually looking at the person, or are you casting them as a role in your movie that is not actually really knowing them? And I've recognized that so much of like, we choose these like actors in our lives, and it's like part of us doesn't even want to deeply know them because we just want them to serve the role that I see on these dating apps. It's like people put in, it's like my needs and I want, and it's like me. And it's like, are you going to make me feel da-da-da-da? And it's like, we forget it's a human and it's reciprocal. So with that, I want to ask you, now having experienced letting go, like, does part of you want to get back together? Like, what does that look like for you? Like, because I think a lot of people, they're like, and not about him, but like, if you have any advice for people who are like, did I let go of a relationship and I'm going to be regretting this? Should I try to get back together with an ex? I feel like we look down upon that in our society. So what is your take on that?
There's a mantra that Reverend Brianna Lynn shared with me that has just lived in my heart for a very long time, and something that I have used as I really believe it in the core of my being. And it's, what is meant for me, there's nothing I can do to fuck it up. And what is not meant for me, there's nothing I can do to make it happen. And I think that there's so much power in letting go. Letting go that I need validation or I need to be chosen. Letting go that it needs to be a certain way. Letting go of my will and melt into thy will. And I believe that by letting something fully go and letting it actually die from what it was and no longer yearning. And I'm not even saying like this needs to be an outwardly expressed yearning. It's an energetic yearning. It's I felt it so deeply in the core of my being. It's a holding on. It's a clinging. It's a gripping energy. Late at night, as it's quiet and laying in bed with my fluffy pillow, and I'm like, feeling that in the core of my being and allowing myself to actually let it go, this is where I return home to myself. And in the in-between moments, which majority of life is made up of the in-between moments, it's like some 90% of life is actually mundane. Yeah. It's in those in-between moments, can I just not abandon and neglect myself? That is the biggest piece here, is that if I'm not getting the validation from that past experience, or I feel like I've messed up, can I forgive myself? Like if I had a 12-year-old daughter and she ran into the room and she's like, oh, Mom, I hurt myself. Or like she did something and she threw something on the floor, like I immediately would forgive her. But am I gifting myself that gift, or am I laying bed at night going, you fucked up. How could you have done that? You should have done better, shaming myself for what has already passed and recognizing that the most sacred thing is what is, and what is here I am. So what would it look like to actually just choose myself in this moment and not neglect myself in this moment, and recognize I'm not ready for another partnership until I genuinely stop neglecting myself. Otherwise, I'm feeding into another codependent pattern where I'm externally validated by this partnership as just something that can only be filled by myself, and realizing for the past 7 years, I've been in partnership. So I've been in, and very loving partnership, besides the last one, very loving, nurturing, kind, generous. So I didn't have to choose myself because I was just always being chosen. And here's the thing, like from the moment that we are born, we know ourselves through the eyes of our mother, right? If baby Blue picked up something and Mum doesn't like it, no, put it down. Instantly, I would associate that that's not okay for me to pick it up. Not because I told myself it's not okay, but because somebody else told me that it's not okay. So for years, I know myself through the eyes of my mother. So now when I'm no longer in direct relationship with my mother, but when I leave home, I will place that role within somebody else. And it tends to be within my romantic partnership. So when another goes, oh, you did amazing, then I can go, I did amazing. Well, then the other goes, I don't like that, and completely withdraws the love. Now what's left? What would be left is like, ugh, you're so unlovable, you're so unattractive, you need to get your ass in the gym, what are you doing? You need to eat cleaner. And it's coming from a deep sense of unworthiness, as opposed to coming from, in this moment, I will not neglect myself. And so I've only been able to actually create a genuine relationship with myself in the moments of heartbreak and being alone. And so the value and the growth and the nutrient-dense spiritual lessons that have been gifted to me during this time, as much as I wouldn't ask for it, but I definitely needed it. Now I feel like I'm laying a foundation of a house that's genuinely built on rock, not on sand. So if I then want to bring children into this life, or I want to buy a house, or I want to actually merge my bank accounts with another, it's coming from a deep sense of I will never neglect myself, and I will self-validate so that you can have your own personal experience, but I'm not like identified through your expression in the world. This to me starts to hum with energetic hygiene and a healthy foundation for a relationship. But the healthy foundation of the relationship starts within myself when I'm not in partnership. So there's so much gold here if I'm curious enough to go mining while I'm in the moments of the in-between, sitting in front of my altar, crying my eyes out.
Trust flows, surrender, let go. Trust flows, surrender, let go. Trust flows, surrender, let go. I'm the one I've been waiting for.
I am so excited to announce that my new song, Trust Flow, is now available on Spotify, iTunes, Apple, wherever you listen to music. So after my divorce last year, I was faced with so much uncertainty, not knowing where I was going to live, what I was going to do. It was like the start of a new life. And at this time, I kept repeating this affirmation to myself: trust, flow, surrender, let go. And if you know me, you know I love Afrobeats music. And this summer, I actually started to produce music. So all of a sudden, I'm channeling drum lines and melodies and creating chords on the synth. And, I grew up playing a lot of music, but I thought production was something that I would do years down the line. And Source said it was time. And I created 5 songs. This is the first of which is dropping, called Trust Flow. So if you're loving the vibe, it's playing in the background right now. I invite you to check it out on Spotify, wherever you listen to music. The link is in in my show notes. And really my intention here is to create music that you feel good about getting stuck in your head, that you want to vibe and dance to, but is also raising your consciousness. You can stream Trust Flow wherever you listen to music. Please share with me your reels on Instagram, and I'm so excited to trust, flow, surrender, let go with you. Completely resonate with everything that you said. And, oftentimes when you're in a relationship where maybe there's a lot of space between you guys, it's normal to immediately then want to go into another partnership because you're like, I was so lonely in my other relationship. Like, I want love. And to really just like pause and not jump into another relationship from that place of like inability to be with yourself and to go into the loneliness and like, what are you so afraid of? And, this year for me, I was in partnership most of my life and with my ex-husband since I was 24 years old. So yeah, like before you were like, do you like to be alone? I'd be like, yeah, I love to be alone. But it's like, I always knew someone was there. There's always someone I could call. There's always someone that, I was connected with. But to like be single and on your own, like now I live up in the mountains like by myself. And it's the most confronting thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I'm so grateful for it because I would have never healed the things that I have healed, looked at the things I would have looked at, gone to the depths of my ancestral lineage and my pain and suffering and like what I really want in life and like all of these things that came to surface in a way that only solitude and like only having yourself can. And I feel so many of us, we avoid that. So we go into the next partnership and then the same patterns continue to show up. And we need periods of just like deep inner reflection, celibacy, like just going, and it doesn't mean it's forever. Like I feel like sometimes it doesn't mean the feminine yearning is very real. And I don't think the point of it is to like shut it off and just like learn to be alone perpetually. I do think humans are communal and we are meant to be relational. And it does make sense to want to be in a relationship. But it's like we need to learn how to walk on our own 2 feet before, wanting to be on someone's piggyback, right? And that's what these periods of being single and internal really do. So I'm curious for you, what were some of your practices to cultivate the awareness of patterns that you have been repeating? Because I think some of us were like, okay, I'm single, but then we distract ourselves, What were you actually doing what were you doing at your altar?
I was reflecting on the ways that I showed up from, I think, the perspective of you don't really know what you have until it's not there. And I started asking myself, where is this pattern showing up in multiple areas of my life? And I tracked it down to, I was sent to boarding school at a very young age, around 7. And I coined or like took on the archetype of the lone wolf. And I was good at that. I never missed anyone. I didn't need people to text me back. I have no like clinginess in friendships or anything like that. Like it was very much like from the age of 17, I was traveling around the world on my own kind of experience. And so what I started realizing was because I didn't really quote unquote need anybody, I was self-sufficient. I would have my own, had my own job as an adult working for myself. So I wasn't financially dependent on anybody else. And what happened is I started receiving incredible opportunities, like the opportunities presenting themselves left, right, and center. And because I didn't need anyone and I was in this lone wolf kind of mindset, it was very much like, well, what do I want? And I think that there's a shadow side in the spiritual community where it's all about me, and my truth and my desires and my wants. And I think that there's a disconnect for also, I'm responsible not just for my intentions, but my impact. And I think that in that time of my life, I was not really thinking about my impact, but more so just my intentions. And so I would say that there was an emotional maturity that wanted to happen. But when I started to notice the pattern, not any shame or blame, this is my upbringing. This is just how I've been trained to like take care of myself, like figure out what I need to figure out, like go into these locations around the world alone and make sure that I'm good. And so there's no fault, there's no blame, there's no shame, but it's also a pattern that's no longer serving. It served then. but it's outdated. It's lost its sell-by date, and the contract has come to a completion because it's no longer creating mutual benefit. It's not creating a win-win-win situation. So what I'm doing, and I've got 4 planets in Scorpio, I love going to the depth. I want to get to the core. I want to get to the root. I don't want to put a balm over the top of it because I don't want to live with myself in that version of myself, creating more issues and then blaming. The second I blame anyone outside of myself as to why things are the way that they are, is the second I lose my power to do anything about it. And I believe that those that genuinely grow very fast or evolve in a deep sense of self-awareness are those that are willing to call themselves out on their own bullshit and to no longer shame themselves for it, but to just recognize this isn't a part of my character trait that I wish to continue. And so it was a deep self-reflection. I also have immediate humans that I deeply respect their perception on life and the way that they choose to weave in the world. And I call on them for counsel. I open up the space of, this is a specific ceremony where you give me genuine feedback of what it is that you see of certain patterns that I maybe am not being fully embodied through my message, through my actions. And in a loving way, receiving feedback. And making the shift between when I receive feedback that actually resonates, it's not that I'm a bad person. So allowing that to be disconnected and saying, these are character traits I have learned, but it's not actually that I'm a bad person with bad intentions or a bad heart. So if I can separate the feedback from the personal who I am in this world and allow it to be a character that is refined so that I can actually be who I'm here to be in this world, what it does is it allows the process to be way more streamlined because I'm no longer having to go through this entire process of self-sabotage, self-loathing, unworthiness, and shaming myself into evolving, but actually knowing at the core of my being that I am deeply inherently worthy, and I've got a good heart and pure intentions, and I'm always in the journey of refining my character traits that I've learned over time so that I can genuinely weave in the world not only what's best for me, but what is also a win-win for others, so that my actions have already been thought through of how they may implement or affect my loved ones, my family, my beloved, future children. But this is the most important piece here, is that while going in the shadow work and calling myself forward in these unconscious patterns, is to hold myself with the utmost compassion while Persephone pulls me into the underworld. That's been the greatest ally throughout this process. So it's a lot of self-reflection. Like you said, the word distraction, like, oh, it's so easy for me to scroll on the gram and just forget about my worries. Like the other day I was crying and then I was like, grabbed my phone and it was like an unconscious thing. And I just went to scroll on Instagram and immediately it literally is like Instagram. It's like Instagram. It's like I just got a moment where I just got this hit and I was like, oh, okay, numbed it out. And I just like, while I scrolled, I felt the emotion get numb. Now, energy is not created nor destroyed. It only changes form. So if I'm not addressing that emotion in the moment and I'm using Instagram to numb myself out, it has to go and sit on the body. So it has to sit in a somatic place because energy is not destroyed. It can't be destroyed. So it has to just change in form. And if it's not emotionally processed through many different ways, breath, sound, movement, touch, shaking, dancing, crying, purging, many different ways of feeling the emotion, it's just got to go somewhere. It's got to sit on my body. And then I'm wondering a week later why my spine is hurting. So once I understand the connection, then, and I become so self-aware that even when I'm numbing myself out, I know what it is that I'm doing. It's about calling myself forward in those moments, putting it aside and actually sitting with the story that I've placed over what it is that I'm feeling. Because everything's a story. Everything is a story that I place on what is. But what is sacred. If it's grief, if it's rage, if it's shame, if it's guilt, it's got a sacred purpose. And if I can soften deeper into what is, then I can start to illuminate the gift within it. And Richard Rudd, one of my mentors, he talked about how awareness or awakening or enlightenment is just a series of softenings. So when we want to get tight or numb out or distract from what the sacred thing that's presenting itself, it's actually softening deeper into it. I'm like, okay, hello emotion, hello jealousy, hello fear, hello rage, hello sadness, hello grief, whatever emotion it is, welcoming it, giving it a seat at the table and softening the body into it and being curious to be a student of it without identifying with the emotion, because identifying with it sticks. It's like I am angry, well, it's sticky, but I am experiencing anger. Well, it passes through as quickly as it came. So when I detach the identification with the emotion and become curious enough to soften into it, then all that's left is gold. Because our greatest challenge is also our greatest gift in this life. But most are not curious enough to find it.
So when you feel that, anger at yourself or whatever it looks like, you want to go on Instagram, what do you do? Like, if you don't have time to do like full like embodiment practice, like how do you in that moment soften into the experience?
Two different ways. Sometimes I like to just voice note it in the heat of emotion.
Love voice noting myself.
And it's like I can go. Like, I don't have to be spiritual, have the right language, or not bring somebody else into it or speak badly about someone behind their back. Like, I can go on the voice note and just like let whatever it is rip out of my mouth. So it has a place of an outlet. Then once the heat of the moment has passed, or the whatever emotion is it's presenting itself, I will circle back onto the voice note and listen from as if I was holding space for another to start to dissect what is the root of the anger or the charge or the trigger towards that person, place, situation, or thing that is creating that within me. And then I'll trace back to like, when is it the last time I can remember feeling that emotion? And was that where it started? And so there's just a deep inquiry of like, know thyself. It's like, it's just a journey of understanding self. So in the moment, just the outlet. Sometimes it's in the shower. Like if I'm like feeling some kind of way, I'll just like, I look crazy. I'm okay with that. Like I just, and then all of a sudden it's like the pressure goes and it has an outlet. Sometimes when I'm feeling lonely and I'm laying in bed, it's like giving myself a really big hug and then reflecting on some of the stuff that I've had to be moved through to get to this point and just giving myself that little self-reassurance. There are many different little tools and tricks in the bag. And in the past, I've been called a witch, which I don't actually resonate with that archetype. Nothing against it, but it's not fully my archetype, but I do resonate with that which is needed. So depending on the emotion, we never step in the same river twice, meaning that no two moments are the exact same. So whatever it is it's presenting itself, it's very unique to the moment. And it requires a deep level of listening beyond the ears to that which is needed. And sometimes that which is needed it could look absolutely nuts. Like literally just standing like, ah! Oh, I feel better now. Okay, great. That was that which was needed.
And that's why like we are so lacking, like so many of us live in apartments that we can't be fully loud, that I realized myself of how much I was suffocating myself, because with breakups, there comes many layers of different emotions, the anger, and it's waves. It's the anger, the disgust, the loneliness, the sadness, the grief, the longing. And, when you lean into it and sound it out, like I would find myself just like this like deep rage. For me, the car is the perfect place because I can be so loud there and not like, there's a part of me that's like my inner like people pleaser that's like, I don't want to be loud and like scare anyone, even though like, I don't know, it's just weird in our society if you hear someone yelling, like I think because my dad was angry that I would never, even when I was in my medicine ceremony, I was like, well, I don't want to scare the other girls, so let me not sound out the anger that was inside of me, because I was way more concerned of how it might impact them because of how it impacted me. So I find my car is like a really good place where I don't have to worry about it, that I can just go like full Kali mom, be like, and like go for it and rage and letting it come out. Dancing is huge for me, of just literally like expressing it through my being, and different dance forms evoke different emotions. Like a big part of earlier of this year was like, I'm going to climb that freaking pole and show it who's boss. And it was like the strength.
Girl, you shake that lower lumbar. I've ever seen anybody, yo.
But it was like turning pain into beauty. That's what pole dancing was. Pole dancing fucking hurts. It's like you're climbing this like metal pole that's like scraping your inner thighs and like cutting your feet, and you're turning into something like graceful and artistic and like sensual. And I'm like, so like that became my practice. And then I was sharing with you that I've been like singing a lot and like activating my voice and making music. And it's like different layers call for different initiations, and you must listen. And give it that space. Otherwise it gets locked and then you get trapped there. And then I feel like you get trapped in that level of consciousness, and then the relationship will have to repeat from that level of consciousness rather than it's like we do all of the up leveling and growing in between the relationships. And yes, there's different lessons that we learn only through partnership. But if we can like go through all of these layers of anger, grief, shame, jealousy, on our own, it's like, then we don't have to deal with that in the partnership. You can like have more of the love and the bliss and the communion, which is like what we ultimately want partnership for. So it's like to be able to lean into that and see breakups as this like space that I can feel all the feelings. And for me too, it brought up all of this healing work that actually had nothing to do with the breakup, but was underneath the surface of why I was even in that relationship. You know, childhood healing, ancestral healing, all of the karmic plays that repeat cycle by cycle that if it wasn't for the breakup, I just wouldn't have looked at, or I would have maybe spent years later looking at that. It's like, I feel because we want to look at what went wrong, we end up looking at all of these things that maybe, again, you don't need to look at unless it becomes this pressing problem in your life. That it took me very deep into my ancestral lineage. And I learned that like my grandma had a divorce that I never knew about. And just like all of the layers of how that impacted my dad and like how it impacted my childhood and him not understanding me. And it was like all of these family things that I would have just never looked at. So I'm curious for you, like, these breakups, how have they shifted you in your sense of gnosis, of understanding yourself?
I feel like a huge ally and tool for me in what you mentioned is the alchemical process of turning it into art, turning the chaos into beauty. My life's work in the Gene Keys double is beauty. And I love to, through the gift of freshness, to bring beauty and freshness into different areas of my life. And something that has deeply inspired me around your journey and being able to witness it from close and afar of, yes, all of the emotions that I don't even have like a fraction of fully understanding of the spectrum of what it is that you navigated during this like crazy initiation. And simultaneously, what I have witnessed is you up on the pole, building that strength and that muscle, feeling strong and sexy for you, in yourself, in your body, to trying different dance classes and sharing a message that is hitting an even deeper note of transparency and vulnerability through your podcast and through your platform, to the way that you're leaning into your sisters and the way that you're listening in conversation. Like, there is so much beauty that has emerged from the cracks of devastation. And it's been deeply inspiring and something that I relate to in my own unique way. It's when I see a blank wall, I see pure potential. When I get in my overalls and I have my hair tied up with a paintbrush and I get all these paints out and I set the space and I light some sage or light incense and I put some music on and I merge with this wall. And after 5 hours, out comes a massive lion that is reflecting back to me the power that lies within me through this creative process that didn't exist 5 hours ago and is now staring at me, reminding me of my courage and my strength and my power. And those are the moments that I live for. It's the art of creation. And also something else that has really forged from this experience is like, sisterhood. Like, in the places that I'm afraid that if I fully express my full truth in the presence of a partner, a romantic partner, that I'm afraid that they will leave if they fully experience my rage, or if they fully experience my trigger, if they fully experience my grief. Sisterhood has proven time and time again, when in the right context and setting, that I can go through my purge and be loved to the core for it. It is renegotiating and retraining my relationship with my own process that it is actually lovable. And so in the space in between, the way that the sisterhood has shown up for me and the way that certain, Reggie, for example, one of my closest sisters, I remember when I was really in it and I was like, when is the end of this sadness? Like, I lost my joy, I lost my play, I lost my excitement, I lost my juju for life or for creating at all. And she came and sat with me, and I remember she sat behind me while I was weeping and she held me and she just whispered in my ear, I'll be here for as long as it takes. I'm not rushing your process. Your process isn't making me uncomfortable. As long as you need to cry, if it's 3 days, 3 months, 3 years, 30 years, I will be here with you. And in that moment, she planted a seed in my psyche that my grief was sacred and that it needed to breathe. And I've only really been able to receive that from sisterhood. I've received unconditional love in a relationship for sure. I've been very blessed in that sense. And there's a texture and a permission slip and a fragrance and a warmth and a softness that sisterhood provides in the moments of despair that have taught me to love myself deeper than I ever had before. So there's creation, there's music, there's singing, there's dancing, there's turning what once was nothing into something beautiful, not for the goal, but for the process itself. And then in the same breath, there's sisterhood that is a lifeline that I'll carry with me forever.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? Like you know what you should do, you know what's good for you, but for some reason you just can't do it. So therapy really helps you figure out what it is that's holding you back so you can work for yourself rather than against yourself. I think we all really need someone to talk to. I mean, friends are amazing, but having a licensed therapist who can hold space for us and we can, share those deeper beliefs and fears and secrets and things that we're ashamed about and bring them to light so we can, really step into our full purpose is so essential. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, I highly recommend giving BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. You fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and it's convenient, it's flexible, and it's suited to your schedule. So you can try it out for 10% off by heading over to betterhelp.com/Sahara. That's betterhelp.com, HELP.com/Sahara. And you can find that link in the show notes. That's so beautiful. And yes, sisterhood is, to me, such a foundation of why we are here. It's the codes that we share, and to have it be dharmic, to create something that's larger than the two of you, whether it's an art project or a song or a business or whatever else. So segueing from moving from sad bitch to bad bitch, and this bad bitch energy that you're stepping into of wanting to freestyle rap, and you're creating your art and you're speaking on stages, what advice do you have for someone who's like, okay, I'm done with the grieving and the processing, and I know there's more to come, but like I'm ready to make this like my transformation moment. Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for them?
I have a friend who's her name's Queen Herbie, and she's epic.
Love her.
She's a dope rapper. And she's got some lyrics in a song called Thank Goddess. And it's like, thank Goddess I'm a bad bitch. Spent 1,000 lifetimes being a sad bitch. Now you're triggered by my highness because I speak another language. And like that specific piece, I go really hard on that part because I can relate to spending 1,000 lifetimes being a sad bitch. Sadness is my go-to. I don't usually feel anger. I don't usually
it's a safer emotion for the feminine to feel.
Yeah. Just sad. I literally collapse. And now it's got to the point where if I'm dancing, before I start dancing, I take a breath and I check in with why. Why am I dancing? Am I dancing because everyone else is dancing? Am I dancing because there's a hot guy across the room and I'm like dancing? Mm-hmm. Or am I dancing because it feels so amazing? And that's what I'm focusing on right now. Maybe there is a hot guy across the room. Maybe he likes my dancing, but it's not my why. My why is that I'm dancing because the music is moving me and it's allowing every single part of my body to start to hum with life force energy. It feels so good to stretch and move my hips that it's emanating this feeling out of me that is creating this irresistible feeling of being me in this moment. And so I apply that same energy towards anything that I'm doing, whether I'm doing the dishes, but I'm playing the Bee Gees Staying Alive and I'm like blasting it through the speakers and I'm having a really good time. It's happiness for no reason. It's happiness because I'm self-sourcing my own joy in the mundane moments. And that can bridge from painting a mural to dancing, to jumping on a pole, to doing the dishes. But for me, that's what it means to genuinely be a bad bitch is this unapologetic, this is who I am, take it or leave it. I don't need your validation. I'm just being embodied because it feels good and I'm following the feeling. And this is bad bitch because the sad bitch is crushed by the world's perceptions, by the projections, by the shame, by the guilt, by the story that is weighing one down and not allowing myself to see the beauty that's right in front of me. It's like I need to clean the lenses off for me to be able to actually perceive the reality. Where a bad bitch is that my reality is born from the inside out, even when I'm scrubbing off yesterday's grimy avocado off this plate. But who I'm being while I'm doing it is a bad bitch. And so what I love at the moment is I live in Topanga and I live in a house of bad bitches. Like, they're epic in their own right and they've got their own thing going on. But we have come together and cheer each other on and celebrate each other. We're in the kitchen, we're like, damn, girl, you look good today. We're like, oh, thanks, mama, let's go. You know, we're like making our mantra in the morning. And it's like, it's this like general permission slip that is breathed from the inside out, that is affirmed by the right environment that incubates this to become the default as who we are. So that even when I'm out in the world and it's not a safe place and people be judging and people are like, what is this bitch going on about or whatever, who I am is so deeply anchored and locked into the core of my being that no longer is the projection swaying me into an inauthentic version of myself. Because magnetism is born from authenticity. And so we actually don't need to do as much when we give ourselves permission to fully be in the vibrational essence of who we believe we are in the present moment. Then actually opportunities present themselves. This is the feminine principle of magnetism. So the bad bitch is a very highly authentic, magnetic being that has got nothing to prove and everything to be in every given moment, whether it's grief or it's pure joy. And I'm subscribed to that vision of myself.
I love this reclamation of even what bad bitch means, right? Because like growing up, like bitch was like this like derogatory term. And like, I get that perspective, but it's like to reclaim that of just like, you know, I love the acronym of like bitch is babe in total control of herself. And it's like, you know, to be your full expression and to be the inner spice girl that you're here to be. And it's like when you lose that sense of like, oh, I need to be this thing for this man to choose me. When you drop that, you're like, what flavor do I fucking want to be? Like, what would make me be my dream girl? What would make me fall in love with me? And you start becoming that. It's like, you just don't even you're not even yearning really for the relationship and the things anymore because you're so fucking full of yourself. And for me, I remember, you know, I was in Bali and I was like deeply grieving and healing. And then I like met someone who had a stage at Envision Festival. Then she's like, do you want to come DJ? And like all of a sudden I'm like DJing at Envision Festival, like thousands of people. And that made me fall so in love with myself of like, oh, I don't need to date a DJ, bitch. I am the DJ. I'm the fucking headline DJ. And like, you know, and just to be my full, like wild Shakti expression. And I wrote this poem on the way there. And it was like way before the Barbie movie, I was even aware of it. But it was like inside of me, there's a wild woman that tore apart the Barbie box that life put her in. Like she howls at the moon and she bleeds with the earth and she believes in death and rebirth. It was this whole transmission that came through me. And it was like, the breakup allowed the inner wild woman to come forth, and the inner wild woman who she doesn't give a fuck. And that's what makes her so sexy. But the sexy isn't like, it's not, she's not giving a fuck so she can be sexy, because then that is giving a fuck, you know? And it's like, we're like, sometimes that subconscious of us is like, let me do the glow up so then I can find the guy. And it's like, the glow up's for you. Bottom line, this is all for you, because the truth be told, most people are going to come in and out of your life. Period. Most people are. And it's like, you are the only person you're going to have for the rest of your life. And it's like, how do you want to show up? And who do you want to be? And if you were to look back on this chapter of your life, like, what do you want this chapter to be? And that for me was so huge of like, right now I have the option, you know, it's like, I can make this either my like demise, or I can make this my like fucking radical rebirth. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to choose the latter. And I'm going to choose to make this like my biggest heart opening yet. And you're still going to go through the sadness. You're still going to go through the grief. But it's like, for me, it's like simultaneously be creating the existence that you want rather than like waiting for the pain and the grief to stop. Because breakups have a lot of layers that honestly for years, you will be excavating. You will be learning deeper and deeper lessons that only certain levels of space between what happened, provide the safety for you to actually receive them. And it's like, even like right after my divorce, I was like, okay, 3 months later, I was like, okay, I've made it to the 3-month portal. Like, I'm good. Like I've made it. And then it would be like, oh wow, the 6-month portal. Oh wow, the wedding anniversary. Like all of these things were deeper initiations, and like, it becomes less. It's like eventually the tears do stop. But to stop waiting for time to pass. I think that was a huge lesson I needed, especially when things are really fresh. It was like, I remember the first month, I was just waiting for the hours to go by to get me out of this pain of like, I can't wait until I can say it's been 1 month. And it's like I find that first month is the hardest in any kind of breakup, because it's like that, holy shit, the shock, the everything. But it's like, do you want to live your life waiting for time to pass? Or do you want to choose to right now take this energy, like all of the energy? It's like breakups, you're electric with energy. And it's like, where do you want to direct and focus it? And it's so easy for us to like take that energy and feel like it's too much and like spiral downwards and spend the energy on overthinking and overanalyzing and this. And like a huge realization I actually had after my medicine ceremony was like, you also just trying to keep processing it is you not letting go. And it's like you trying to be like, okay, let me piece together my inner child with his inner child and this and like how this, and it's like, that's still holding on, And it's like, eventually you just had to accept, lo que sea, sea, it happened. And on one level and dimension, you'll be mourning something for the rest of your life. And on another level and dimension, you're not even going to remember this. So it's like both are simultaneously existing. And life is happening right now, And I remember like the first breakup I went through with my college boyfriend, we were together for 4 years. It took me so long to overcome that because I didn't understand healing. I didn't understand grief. So like I was like held on to this anger for so long. And for this, because I had the tools that I had, I was like, oh wow, like God is giving me a chance to put all my tools into practice right now. Like, let's go in, let me feel the feels, let me mourn, cry, dance, scream, travel, play, create this, that, be alone, be a nothing, like all and nothing at once. And I feel like that's how I have transmuted into my most inner bad bitch self. And, even you came in and you're like, I love how you have this mermaid hair and these new tattoos. And I'm like continually asking myself, it's like, what is my dream girl? Like, what does my crush on myself want me to do right now? And I'm so grateful for the experience because I love myself more than I ever have before. And that is priceless.
Ooh. I would say that I would go through it again to receive the gift of self-love.
100%, 100 times.
But it's not easy. It's brutal. And if there's anybody listening to this podcast, going through heartbreak, like time does heal it, and this too will pass. And also, this is such a potent time for a deeper level of self-awareness to drop in, that we can actually start to access that version of ourselves that we know we came here to be, and we can start forging it in the fire and allow that fire to burn off all that we had picked up from society, from lovers, from parents, from schooling, from media around who it is that we are, to start forging who it is that we are from the inside out based off of a deep sense of feeling. And now this is a human that turns head without saying a word when they enter into the room, because you can feel it. When someone has been brought to their knees and they know how to be in a place of joy and everything in between, and they allow all of the sacredness of life to move through them so they can remember the wholeness that is available within our own thoughts of when we accept the most sacred thing is what is and transcend a binary experience that there's a right and a wrong emotion, that it just is showing up because it's here to teach us something. And to go through heartbreak isn't wrong. It's something bad, not that you did anything that was bad. It's more so, it's here, it's now. There is death, purification, rebirth, integration, the cyclic nature of the shamanic cycle, the cyclic nature of being human. Now I'm in the death. But I cannot have summer without the winter. And so when the winter presents itself, when the shadow presents itself, can I respect it as much as I respect the positive emotions? And when I give the shadow my respect, the gifts that are available on the other side of it will last with us a lifetime. because the clothes on our back, the money in our bank account, the homes that we live in, the partnerships that we're in, our friendships, they're all subject to change. They will change. But the awareness that you gift yourself, the things that you learn, the deep study, the introspection, that stays with you for the rest of your life, and it becomes an asset to every single place that you enter into. And it's the greatest investment we could ever make. And heartbreak is the place, right, as Rumi said, the cracks is right where the light enters. And this is something that stays with us forever. And so it's not about if, it's when. And when it shows up, what we do with it can forge and determine who we become for the rest of our lives.
Take me to church, I worship in the night. So good. So, and as you were saying that, it actually took me to this vision of myself that I was like on my knees, looking in the mirror, just crying, like just so broken, so sad. And it was like, it just reminded me of like the beauty you're experiencing right now is because you are willing to face like the core levels of like ugliness that is possible. And that's the beauty of the breakup of like, you reach this range that you would have never accessed on your own. This range of anger, of grief, of sadness, of aloneness. You touch these places that you didn't even know existed. It's like deeper layers of the ocean. And sometimes it's so deep that you're like, holy fuck, like, will I ever get out of this? Like, I remember telling my friend, I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to like to dance anymore. I don't think I'm ever going to wear bright colors again. That old version of me is dead. People probably aren't going to really be interested in my social media. It's not going to be the same anymore, but I'm willing to be here in this death as long as it takes. If this is just who I am for the rest of my life, then this is just what it is. And I didn't know. Honestly did not know. I even told my social manager, I'm like, these are our new colors. And it was like brown and dark maroon and this. Like, I'm like, this is it moving forward. And I was just like writing death poems constantly. Like, they're like, okay, another death poem? Like, you know. But I needed to be honest with like, this is where I am and I will be here as long as it takes. And it was almost like I had to even, I couldn't eat food. You know, my body was in such a state of shock. I couldn't eat. I couldn't even drink coffee, you know, but I needed to purify. I needed to kill all former identities of me, all former roles that I played, all these former belief systems that I had of who I was, what a wife was, what marriage was. And these were all ideas that were given to me, but did not come from me. Like I just inserted myself into role, put the white dress on and like, here you are, now you are wife. And like, this is husband and this is what husband and wife do. And you play it out until death do you part, you know? And it's like, God, I believe gave me a second lease on life that I would have never taken myself, but I needed to go through what I went through for me to have a life that I didn't even believe I was like worthy or capable of having in this lifetime. You know, I'm someone who's like a loyalist. I'm like, I will hold on forever. I will make things work. Like it's maybe my 8 planets in Capricorn.
8 planets?
8 planets in Capricorn, baby.
8 planets in Capricorn. Hell,
so I'm like, yeah, like whatever. I'll make anything work. Yeah. Like it's all good. That life was just like, want more for yourself. Want more. And I would say I'm still in my spring. I wouldn't say I'm in my full summer yet. It's still in this like, I'm like just starting to walk with these new feet of like, who am I in this new world, in this new reality? Like, what do I want? Where do I want to live? Like, who are my identity? I was telling you, I started producing music and, you know, these new things. I'm like, I can do that. I can do this. And, you know, so it's like being patient with yourself because it is a process and different initiations will come at different time periods. But be in the one that you're in now. Like for me, it's like the things I'm interested in shift, the music I'm listening to shift, like even like the Instagram accounts. Like I went through this like kizomba dancing phase. I was like, I love kizomba dancing, which is like this like Portuguese partner style of dancing. I was just like following all these kizomba things and I like lived that reality in Portugal and got the codes I needed from that. And it was just like, okay, and no. And like now we're moving on and it's like healing my Persian lineage. And it's like every person, every chapter of your life has codes, has lessons, has medicine for you. And then sometimes these show up as lovers, you know, they show up in people lessons. But what I've learned, it's like the love story is really you with you.
Yeah.
And when we can drop that like, well, and then I'll find the one, you know, There is no one.
Yeah, I can't subscribe to that now.
There is no one.
I don't know if I love, you know, like a good fantasy novel or whatever, but like.
Love a good fairy fuck. No.
It's like so much pressure. The one. This is the one. Oh, maybe they're the one. It's like there's so much pressure. That person must be everything that we're not for ourselves. And recognizing that, we go through many different iterations of ourselves in this life. We're reborn every 7 years, like on a biological level. Every 75 trillion cells will completely regenerate into a new cell. So we are not in the same physical body we were 7 years ago. So we're going to go through seasons and cycles of this different experience. But to place on one person that they are the one is a lot of pressure. Now, I'm not saying that it's not possible to find your partner like my grandparents did and ride it out right into the last breath.
And they're choosing the one, but it doesn't mean it's like your soul assigned to only be with one. It's what I'm realizing, relationship is not about who you have the most similar interests to or even a vision of your life, but it's like who's willing to put in the work to be with you. Because every relationship, inevitably, those initial sparks will fade. And it's like, who's willing to continue to show up and lean in and have the hard conversations and do the hard things. And that's the relationship that will become the one, you know? And it's just like with friendship too. It's like even friendships, you have to water them, and there's maintenance and there's vulnerability and there's death and rebirth cycles, and to continue to choose each other. And I would say the challenge of that, and even that I've experienced, is like we're waiting for someone to like save us and like take us out of the misery of being on our own, you know? And it's like, it's almost like sometimes I catch myself in this like living my life, imagining how I will tell my future partner, of like seeing my life through their eyes. And I'm like, and so when you said that about how we see ourselves through our parents' eyes, I'm like, that's that piece of it of like, girl, you don't need to live through your life now thinking about how it's like, sure, you can have that thought sometimes, but like, especially at the beginning, it was almost like, I can't wait to tell him about this and that. And it's like, no, it's for you. It's for you. It's not like being single is this thing that you have to get over with and then you'll be in a partnership again and you'll be saved. It's like, realistically in our lives, we will have multiple periods of being single. Realistically, in a woman's life, she'll have a huge percentage of her life being single simply for the fact that we outlive men, you know? So we have to be okay with that, you know? And we can't see this as this like void that I'm in right. Like I remember people telling me, they're like, you know, you're only going to be single probably for like a year. So like make the most of it right now while you can. But then when I take that on, it feels like this thing that I'm just, first of all, who knows if it's for a year? Truthfully, maybe it is for the rest of my life. I have to also be okay with that reality, you know? And then it's like, instead of I can live my life now that I'm single, but once I get into partnership, it's going to be like me abandoning myself again. Like, I'm not going to take that on. It's like, it can only get better and it can only get truer. And I'm not going to go back into the same cage that I put myself in for love, because that's not what love is. Like anything that makes you compromise your liberation is not love. It's suffocation in love's name.
Yeah. Love dies in constriction and grows in freedom. And what would it look like to find a love where you're both free and in the freedom you choose each other? And I think that is where true growth lies. And I've experienced it. So I know that it's real. I know that it exists. And also what it's done is it's set a very high standard for myself and for anybody I choose to dance with, because something that I've incorporated, I don't know where I heard it. It was a while ago. And it's something that has just continued to live true for me, is that I will not share sexual energy with anyone I wouldn't wish to be.
Yes. I have been on a celibacy journey, because I'm like, whoever you have sex with, you are merging in and you are taking on that like, and for me, I believe that when you have sex with someone, especially as a woman, you do get attached. So it's like, do I want to be attached to this person? And again, I believe do whatever you want. But I think so many of us, we think bouncing back is like, be sexually liberated and have sex with a bunch of different people. And maybe that's true for some people. But for me, it's been like cultivating my own sovereignty of knowing myself sexually without anyone else.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes also I find that for me personally, not saying that there's a right and wrong way of doing it, but I think the space between is the actual like sexiest part, is like the moments of actually falling in love with somebody's soul. And then from that place, allowing the space in between to create this charge and this build and this sexual tension and this like this the genuine deep rapture of somebody's essence. And instead of trying to fill a void, that is like so rich and so intoxicating that if it's not that, then I love being alone to the point where I'm not trying to create anything that is not nourishing me the way that my solitude now nourishes me. As I love being alone. I could stay in my room for months. Like I just have to bring my friends over, like, all right, just bring some A1 guineas. And like I don't have to leave my room. And so it's interesting because I also set up a new boundary on social media where you can't DM me anymore. So no one's sliding into my DMs. I don't leave my house very often. And Raya still
Living
won't
your
accept me,
best
by the way.
elven life.
You came over and told me about Raya. I tried to sign up. I'm months out. They still
Girl,
haven't been
this is
accepted.
better not.
Well, I was like, well, I'll try my thing at
Uber
online
Eats some
dating.
dates. Yeah.
I was like, I didn't even get into Raya, so it's like, and within all of this, I'm not really setting myself up for a win when it comes to meeting somebody else. But what I am actually setting myself up for a win when it comes to meeting somebody else is that my solitude has become so rich and so delicious. And so I crave it after 4 hours of being out of the house. I'm like, can't wait to get home. Can't wait to be alone. Can't wait to run a bath. Can't wait to listen to my music. Like, can't wait to do whatever it is that I want to do in my little cave. But when it gets to that point where I don't need anything outside of me, realizing the universe doesn't give me what I want. The universe gives me who I am. And who I am is being intoxicated by my own presence. Now, this is actually way more effective than hanging out at the bar down the road and just waiting for the one to be presented into my life.
I'm here, the one. Yeah.
Just walks in with a
Would you like a
t-shirt
shot?
with the number one on it, and you're like,
Like, I don't even drink, but sure. This is apparently how you meet people. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, that's what's so hard for me. It's like, that's why I can't date, because I'm like, I have such depth in my friendships and the people in my life that I'm like, I can't small talk with a stranger. Like, so how many siblings do you have? I'm like, I went on one date with someone from Raya. This is my
You
one
did?
that I actually went on one date with someone on Raya. And it was a fucking interrogation. They're like,
From him or you?
from him? No. He's like, where'd you grow up? What did you major in? What time do you sleep? What time do you wake up? Do you take substances to fall asleep?
Never.
Like, no, it's like he has a list of what he's looking for and what the red flags are, that like, instead of actually getting to know the person in front of him, it's like, are you going to fit into my role of what I'm looking for wife? And it was just like, so I'm like answering all these questions to someone I don't even fucking know, And it's like I'm applying for a job. I don't even know if I want the job yet, but I'm like, I wake up at kind of early sometimes, but maybe I'm just like, after I was like, why did I do that? But it's like, I don't get how people, they just excuse themselves and leave after 15 minutes. I just could never do that to someone. Like, there was one other date I went on a while. This was like 8 months ago or something. And I just ended up coaching him the whole time. I think I like gave him like a few like references of books and stuff to read. I'm just like, I don't know how to have small talk. It's like, we're either going into the depths of your soul or I don't know how to do this.
So what would be an ideal question for somebody to ask you? If you,
I feel like an ideal, so I've learned a lot that as humans, when we are faced front to someone, it can trigger this like, we're either going to fight or we're going to like fuck, Whereas the way that we have actually gained attraction to people over time is by being side by side. So it's like noticing the person like working next to you and like, ooh, I like the way that he does this. Or, ooh, I noticed him looking at me, and like the attraction is building and building over time. And then you have like an office crush and like that anticipation builds. And then he asks you on a date and it's like, you're already so bought in an attraction and the attraction's there. Whereas we don't do that now. It's like, hey, you think I'm hot. I think you're hot. And now we're face by face with zero context of each other. And we're trying to find some mutual ground. And then, so it's like, you're like trying to make this like connection work. Whereas like in your life, you may not have ever met. You may have never been in the same places that it's like, I mean, I met my ex-husband on Bumble. And I used to say, oh, like I would have never met him in my normal life. Like how amazing because of this app. And now I'm like, yeah, I would have never met him in my normal life because we don't have the same friends. We don't have the same interests. It was like, we're in different worlds. And that ended up being a huge part of why the relationship did not work, So it's like, I think the apps can work just because we spend a lot of time at home and it's like harder to meet people. But I think it puts us in this really unnatural position. Like even flirting with someone that you haven't met yet. It's like you're expected to flirt, but you don't even know if you like them. That it's like, I can't flirt with someone's name on a picture. I don't even know if you look like your pictures,
I don't even know how to flirt anymore, to be honest. Like, there was
that
a
part.
meme that I saw the other day that was like, someone was like me flirting, and it was like two people sitting next to me. It was like, so do you like raccoons? And I was like, oh my God, I feel so seen. I genuinely don't even know how to flirt. I think my flirt is just genuinely being interested in someone, and that flirt just goes across the board. It's just like enamored by somebody's behavior or like way of being that I just want to sit next to and want to learn more about. And there's just a natural gravitational pull that there's not even flirting, doesn't even come from the mind anymore, but it's more so just a genuine synergy. And you can either create chemistry chemistry is either there or it's not, but you can't create it, right? Like the Raya thing, you just sit there and be like, so where's the golden thread that connects us in any kind of relatability? Well, that's
we found we both liked the ocean, so there was that.
The what?
The ocean.
Oh, okay.
We talked about fish for a very long time. We're like, what do you think about dolphins? Sea turtles? Seals? That was literally our conversation.
What about fish? Fish that swim in groups? So you're like,
your thoughts on jellyfish, yay or nay? But it was like, and it's, I get it. Like it's hard to just go out to the bar and hope you're going to meet someone. I remember being in college and like putting on your makeup and your outfit, like hoping tonight you would meet the guy and like being so disappointed when you didn't. So it's like these dating apps maybe allow you to like buy back your time, that you don't have to do that. But then again, it's like, I find that most people on apps don't actually even, first of all, you don't even talk for the most part. Most people on Raya match and never speak. Just so you know.
Oh, okay.
There's not a lot of conversation happening.
Okay, cool. So you've already been rejected before you spoke.
Well, it's because it's like, I mean, this is a whole other podcast. So it's like, as a woman, it's like, I desire a man to be in pursuit. So I'm not going to message you first. So if you're not messaging me, I'm not going to message you. So then you're just going to, so after 10 days, they unmatch you. So that happens a lot, that you just never talk.
Oh. Okay.
And then oftentimes they message you, but then you take a second look at their pictures, and then you're like, remember I showed you some of them?
You came over to my house, like we went in for a hot minute.
You were like, babe, if you saw this guy in real life, I'm like, you're right, I would have never. But it was like your standards get so low because you're trying to like be open-minded,
No.
So then it's like, for the most part, they message you and then you just don't respond. So it's like, for it to get to a point to have a conversation that you like the conversation enough to get on a FaceTime, that you like the FaceTime enough to meet in person, is a fucking miracle. Bless you. You go on enough dates to get married. Hallelujah. I don't know how people do it. I did it once. I don't know how that would happen again.
I can't think of anything worse than being stuck on a date with someone that I'm like no compatibility with. Like I would be like, where's the ejection button? Like, how do I press it right now? I'd rather not even venture.
I'd rather not.
It than just sit in that situation.
And then they're like, you have to kiss a million frogs. And I'm like, I can't. I'm gonna stay at home and order Erewhon. And
Yeah, I'm ordering Erewhon.
There was a funny meme I saw, and it was like one of the Kardashians, like all glammed up in bed, and it was like me staying in bed all day waiting for someone to fall in love with me.
Yeah.
Relatable,
Yeah, totally. It's very real.
But we have to just have trust.
Huh?
We have to have trust that,
also,
you will meet the right person in the right time. And ideally, I believe, have some mutual friends and some mutual context.
I made it, I really reflected the other day, and I said, if I was to never meet anybody and I wasn't to have kids, right? Because one of my absolute joys of life would to be a mother. And if I was to never meet somebody and never have children, would I be okay? And I reflected on my life as it is, and I was like, I'd be more than okay. I would have such a great time. I would have creative babies instead of human babies. And I'm surrounded by beautiful humans, and I love what I do. And I this has not been something that has been given to me. This has been worked for many years, but if I was to make peace with everything as it is right now, then I think that that's where the softening is born. And recognizing being single and going into public spaces. And then there's an additional layer as well, of course, which is I'm, hard of hearing in both my ears. So I usually wear hearing aids. But I get like pretty high level social anxiety specifically in groups of any group of a public space. And then going in the extra level is like dating someone, and then like the little sweet whispers or the moments of conversation not being able to hear. So there's additional layers to my fear of like even interacting with somebody in general. And then like, even if I do find attraction with somebody in a public space and I want to connect with them, but then all of a sudden I have this wall of fear that I'm not going to be able to hear them. So I don't spark the conversation. So there's many different layers to it. And in the same breath, I've always found that the partners that have been long-lasting, deeply nourishing relationships where I've been blessed enough to have 2 of them have found me when I have been rocking my shit for me. The first one was when I was doing an art show and I was surrounded by my friends and I had my artwork all over the walls, and he walked in as a friend's guest and I met him, and that sparked the entire relationship with Amir from Travel Markets. And then with Andre, I was rocking the Mother Tree, which is a community space, and I was rocking it with my sisters and we were hosting gatherings and I was so in my flow, and that was when we met. And then the further relationship was when I was like really rocking it in the podcast world, and I was stepping in on stages and I was like really bringing myself to the world of communicating and sharing my gifts through that way. So the 3 different things was art, community, and public speaking. 3 of my dharmas. And that was how these people came into my life. So the indication out of 3 of 3 is telling me, stay in my lane, stay in my dharma.
Because then you're shining your light, and you are that lighthouse that what is meant for you will be magnetized towards you, and you're not searching and scrolling. It's like something about even just the energy of being on these apps is there's an energy of lack that is like a collective of everyone's just like fear scrolling of like, will I find them? Will I find them? It's like, that's not the energy that you would even want to enter into a relationship. And it's like through you, and it's like, I believe that that's how God designed us. It's like through you living your dharma, shining your light, being in your full expression, you will have everything that you desire, including the love, and having the patience and trusting that the amount of space you have in between relationships is the exact amount that you need to get the initiations that only singledom can give you.
And when we place that trust, it's the same of what I was saying before of like, the universe doesn't give you what you want, the universe gives you who you are. And if you trust, and if you genuinely soften, then the universe can only give you that you trusted into. So it's weaving that of what you're emanating, like a radio tower of every single 60,000 thoughts we think on average a day, that they're humming at the frequency of a certain fine tuning of peace or trust in that everything is exactly as it should be, otherwise it would be different. That trust will then be met. And so it's easy to trust when you got the thing, but what would it look like to trust when you don't have the thing and you self-source it for yourself and then see what comes out from it? So ultimately we're not coming, because our story haven't ended yet, right? Like we're still in the middle of our story. So we're sharing from the weavings of the things that we've learned throughout heartbreak and falling in love, and when did it show up and how did it come up for us? And this is our own personal experiences. This is not the truth with the capital T. This is as close to our own individual truth that we can get to. And in the same breath, we're here to be as equals with others that are on this journey of finding their beloved, or finding the beloved within themselves and their relationship with trust. And if anything that can be extracted from this podcast is a deeper sense of empowerment for your own unique path, and recognize it's not about the external stimulus, it's about the feeling that the world responds to. And so what would it look like to find that self-sourced sense of love for yourself and be in the inquiry of where it's absent, to start to be able to self-source it and recognize that's the foundation of what true love is founded on. And so it seems simple and yet not very easy at all when it goes to being human on planet Earth. And yet may this podcast and any other times where we share about this topic be merely a deeper level of inspiration to find our own true north for ourselves, and let the world respond to that.
The mantra that I was continually telling myself, and as you were saying it, it was like exactly that. It's trust, flow, surrender, let go. So the song that I made is called Trust, Flow, Surrender, Let Go. And I would just keep telling myself, because it's easy to trust when you know, and it's like, you can't. You just have to trust that it will happen in divine timing, be in your flow, living your dharma, surrender to the fact that we ultimately don't know, and let go and be in the void and be in the in-between, which, like you said, is the majority of life, So we're tuning into the same frequency. I'm excited. Next time you're on the podcast, we'll be like, we're either rappers or we're in sacred union, or maybe both, or maybe neither. We'll see. Trust, flow, surrender, let go. So with that, where can people connect with you, listen to your podcast, and learn more from you?
So my podcast is the Deja Blue podcast. It is on all podcasting platforms. It's also on YouTube, so I have video for it. We're season 3 right now and rocking. It's been such a beautiful journey. And also on Instagram, Blue of Earth, BLU of Earth, also Blue of Earth website, which is coming soon. We're rebranding it. And that the main places that I'm going to be found. The podcast is we're over 100 episodes in, so there's a lot of content there, and that's my whole entire journey while simultaneously interviewing people that have sparked inspiration in my own personal life. And then there's the Fluorescent Sisterhood, which is for women to, like what we talked about, one of the main pillars of support while we're going through the what the fuck moments is sisterhood. And so myself and Reggie Riverbear, who's also the co-founder of Fluorescence, is a modern mystery school for women. We have 7-week online programs where we learn all about our gene keys and astrology and breaking down our money trauma to working with the elements of how to build your own altar, like a whole degree of different topics. And we also have in-person retreats that are all shared on the platform. And we also have a social media for women. We have about 500 members right now of women from all over the world, where we have meetups and marketplaces where women share, opportunities to share in a safe place where you're going to be celebrated for your song or for your expression or for your spoken word or whatever it is that you wish to share, uncensored, as an opportunity to bridge a gap between women that may not have access to sisterhood, which has been one of the biggest lifelines for me in my life and my growth and my development and my self-awareness. So that's what I'm up to.
Well, thank you so much for sharing today. You are really such an inspiration, and you're a true modern day medicine woman. And like every time I hear your name, I'm always like, I love Blue so much. So I'm so grateful that you're here. And thank you guys so much for listening. Please share this episode. So many of us are in the heartbreak portal, whether it's fresh or whether it was years ago. There's layers to it. So please share the episode. And if you loved it, please leave a review for it in the iTunes store. And as a free gift, I will send you my womb meditation. So this is a meditation to connect to your divine feminine portal within. So all you got to do is leave a review for the podcast. Let me know what other kind of topics you would love. Take a screenshot and send it over to me at sahara@iamsahararose.com. You can find that email and all of the links mentioned today in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.
Trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance. Close your eyes and listen. Surrender, let go. So trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance. Close your eyes.